When you first start in canoeing, it can seem like there's an awful lot to learn. But in terms of technique, all you really need to know in the beginning is how to get safely into your boat and perform a few simple strokes. So, here's Helen Reeves with our Go Canoeing Guide to getting started on the water.
I can remember the first time I had to try and get in a canoe. That was a drama in itself, the thought of actually getting into a boat that was sitting on water. So when you're getting into a boat, you need to make it as simple as possible. Put the boat nice in the water, make sure it's nice and flat and still, and then you start to think about getting in it. Put one hand firmly on the side of the bank, the other hand holding onto the front of the cockpit, which is the rim around where you're getting in. And then you're going to put your foot that's nearest the water into the boat first, and followed quite quickly by the other foot, making sure they're quite close together in the centre of the boat. And don't put all your weight in it at once. Slowly put the weight on it, using your arms to gradually lower your bottom, then your bottom's in, lower the legs, off you go. So forward paddling is the one thing that everybody needs to do, and you would think it's the most simple thing, but actually it's amazing how difficult it can be. So when you want to think about going in a straight line, you sit in your boat, make sure you're balanced nicely in the middle, your body's quite upright, and then your hands are nice on the paddles, even distance from either end of the blade, which is at the end of the paddle, and then you're set to go. And rather than just putting all your weight on one side, you need to start by slowly putting a bit of weight and a bit of strength on a pull. Make sure the blade is vertically going into the water, and then you pull exactly the same on the other side, and then build it up, making sure that you're not doing too big of strokes, because as soon as you do one big stroke, the boat could just go one direction and it's much harder to correct it. So just get the power even on both sides, and then slowly build it up until you're in a nice glide and you're in a nice rhythm, and then you can start adding the power. If you find yourself paddling down a stretch of river and your boat starts veering off to the left or to the right, the easiest way and the best way to try and correct it is just by gently using this forward paddling strokes. And the way to do it is just to add a little bit more pressure on one side or the other. So if your boat's going off to the left, you start trying to paddle a little bit harder on the left-hand side until it's adjusted. But what you want to make sure when you're doing that is you give yourself enough time to actually see whether the boat's adjusted before you put the next stroke in. Rivers are dynamic places that are always different and bringing up different obstacles along the way. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're coming towards a tree or a bit of wood and you need to make sure that you negotiate around it, a stroke that will commonly be used is something called a sweep stroke. And this stroke is one that's basically a bit bigger on one side. So if you're paddling and you need to make a turn to the right, the best thing is to use a sweep stroke on the left-hand side. You place your paddle at the front of the boat and you push it out away from you, creating an arc on the left-hand side of the boat. And equally, if you need to turn the boat to the left, you do exactly the same on the right-hand side. You place the paddle at the front of the boat, as you would with a forward stroke, but then you push the blade away from you, creating a nice arc to the back of the boat. The other stroke you can use is not a forward paddling stroke, that could be used actually in two types. There's a rudder. You can have a really strong rudder, which you would use maybe perhaps if you got distracted and you suddenly find yourself flying towards a bank and you need to stop and make a direction, then you could put a rudder in. And this stroke happens at the back of the boat. So you place the blade at the back of the boat vertically in the water and you push it away from you to create a sharp turn. The other use for a rudder is a gentle steering stroke. So exactly the same as a strong rudder, you place the blade vertically at the back of the boat, but you can just gently push it away from you and bring it back in, and you just see the front of the boat turn a little bit. And it can just be a really nice guiding stroke as you flow down a river. Canoeing is a forward-facing sport, so it's inevitable that if you're travelling forward, at some point you're going to need to stop. So to stop the boat, we use a stroke that's opposite to what a forward stroke is. So you place the blade by your hip vertically in the water and you push the blade away from you to the front of the boat. Repeat this motion on both sides until the boat is stationary. And to follow on from that, to move the boat backwards, you use exactly the same stroke, but elongate it a little bit so you reach further back, putting the blade vertically into the water as much as you can, and you push it all the way to the front of the boat. And like a forward stroke, keep the pressure as even as you can on both sides to make sure that you don't go veering off in different directions. So you know how to go forward, you know how to go backwards, It's also very useful to know how you can go sideways. So sideways, we use a stroke called a draw stroke. So it's a simple stroke. You place the blade vertically in the water beside you and you pull it towards your hip, repeating it until you get to the side of the bank or away from the bank, depending on where you want to go.